If you are over 60 and you check your blood pressure at home, I need you to stop and listen very carefully, because the number you are trusting may be completely wrong, not slightly off, not 1 or 2 points higher because you were annoyed, rushed, or tired. Wrong enough that your doctor could prescribe medication you do not actually need. Wrong enough that you could spend months worrying about a problem that was never really there. And even more dangerous than that, wrong enough that you could feel reassured while a real blood pressure problem keeps growing quietly underneath the surface. That happens more often than people think. Every day, in ordinary homes, with ordinary people trying to do the right thing. I'm Dr. Adrian, and after years of watching patients panic over blood pressure numbers that were never accurate, and other patients walk around falsely reassured because their machine kept giving them readings that looked safe while something more dangerous was developing in the background, I need to tell you something clearly. A blood pressure monitor is only as honest as the conditions you use it under. If the conditions are wrong, the reading is wrong. And if the reading is wrong, every decision that follows can be wrong too. The medication decision, the reassurance, the fear, the delay, the follow-up, the emergency room visit, the decision to wait and see. All of it can be built on bad information. That is why this matters so much. Because blood pressure is not just a number on a screen. It is one of the most important windows we have into what is happening inside your arteries, your heart, your kidneys, and very often, your deeper metabolic health. And yet millions of people are measuring it under conditions that practically guarantee error. They walk in from another room and press the button immediately. They check it after coffee. They talk while the cuff is inflating. They cross their legs. They check it while watching the news. They measure with a full bladder. They let their arm hang in the wrong position. They use the wrong cuff size. Then they stare at the number like it is pure truth. It isn't. Not under those conditions. And what frustrates me most is this. Many of the mistakes that ruin a blood pressure reading take less than a minute to correct. Less than a minute. That is why I need you to stay with me until the end of this. Because I'm going to walk you through 11 of the most common blood pressure mistakes people make at home, exactly why each one distorts your numbers, and the precise 7-day protocol that gives you readings you can actually trust. And at the end, I'm going to show you the one weekly average that matters most, the one that tells you whether it is actually time to call your doctor or whether you can genuinely relax. But before we get to the mistakes, I need you to understand something deeper, because once you understand this, you will never look at a blood pressure machine the same way again. Blood pressure is not random. It is not some mysterious number that floats in and out of existence for no reason. It is a live reflection of forces inside the body. The cuff inflates around your arm until it briefly stops blood flow through the artery. Then it slowly releases pressure. As blood begins moving again, the machine detects that return of flow. That gives you the systolic pressure, the top number. Then it tracks when flow becomes more continuous and stable. That gives you the diastolic pressure, the bottom number. So what the machine is really showing you is this. How much pressure your arteries are under in this exact moment, under these exact conditions. That last part is everything, under these exact conditions. Because if the conditions are wrong, the number does not represent your true resting blood pressure. It represents your mistake. The mistake might be posture, or movement, or caffeine, or stress, or bladder pressure, or bad cuff size, or a badly placed arm, or the wrong device entirely, or simply the right device used in the wrong way. That is why 2 readings taken 15 minutes apart can look like they came from 2 different people, not because your arteries changed that fast, because the conditions did. Now here is where this conversation becomes even more important. High blood pressure is not only about salt or stress or getting older. In many adults, especially after 40 and 50, it is deeply tied to insulin resistance, arterial stiffness, inflammation, sympathetic nervous system overactivation, kidney sodium retention, poor sleep, and chronic metabolic dysfunction. That means blood pressure can be one of the earliest visible signals of a much deeper story in the body. But if your readings are inaccurate, that signal gets distorted. You may think you are fine when you are not. Or you may think you are in trouble when the reading was never real to begin with. That is why technique matters. Not because I want you to become obsessed, because your doctor cannot help you well with bad data, and you cannot make good decisions with bad data either. So let's fix the technique. Let's start with mistake number 1, not resting before you measure. This is probably the most common error people make, and it feels harmless because it feels efficient. You sit down, wrap the cuff, press the button, done. But physiologically, that is one of the worst ways to get a true resting blood pressure. Because your body does not become fully rested the moment you touch a chair. If you have just walked across the house, climbed stairs, carried groceries, made the bed, taken a shower, cleaned the kitchen, or even moved briskly from one room to another, your sympathetic nervous system is still more active than you think. Your heart rate is a little higher. Your arteries are a little tighter. Your body is still carrying the after effect of movement. So when you measure immediately, the machine is not giving you a true resting number. It is giving you a number shaped by the fact that your body is still partially activated. I want you to imagine a man named Robert, 67 years old. Every morning he checks his pressure after letting the dog outside, refilling the kettle, walking back from the bathroom, and pacing a bit around the kitchen. Then he sits down and checks it. Day after day, he sees numbers that worry him. Not terrifying, just high enough to slowly change how he feels about his health. He starts thinking, maybe my blood pressure is getting worse. Maybe I need stronger medication. Maybe something is happening. Then one day, someone tells him to sit still for 5 full minutes before checking. Same machine, same arm, same person. Different number. Not because his arteries healed in 5 minutes, because the truth finally had room to appear. That is how easy it is to create false hypertension at home. The fix is simple. Sit quietly for 5 full minutes before you take the reading. Not while texting. Not while reading news. Not while watching something upsetting. Sit quietly, back supported, feet flat, no conversation. Let your nervous system settle. That one habit alone can meaningfully change your numbers. Now, mistake number 2. Talking while the cuff is on. This sounds tiny, almost ridiculous. A quick reply to your partner. A short sentence. A little comment while the cuff is inflating. Most people assume that cannot possibly matter. It does. When you talk, your breathing changes. Your chest muscles engage. Your brain shifts into processing and response mode. Your nervous system becomes more stimulated, and that stimulation has a measurable cardiovascular effect. I once watched a patient take 3 blood pressure readings in front of me. On the first one, he chatted casually while the cuff inflated. The reading was high. On the second, he stayed silent. The reading dropped. On the third, he started talking again halfway through, because silence made him uncomfortable. The reading rose again. The machine was not malfunctioning. It was honestly reporting what his body was doing. That is what people miss. The machine is not lying. It is faithfully measuring bad conditions. So here is the rule. If the cuff is inflating, you are silent. No talking. No reading the number out loud. No asking someone in the room a question. No reacting mid-measurement. Silence is part of the protocol. Now, mistake number 3, checking after caffeine. This matters more than people realize. Coffee, tea, energy drinks, pre-workout powders. Anything with caffeine can temporarily raise blood pressure, especially if you are sensitive to it or do not consume it heavily every day. Even in daily coffee drinkers, the effect may be smaller, but smaller is not the same as zero. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, which normally help keep the nervous system from running too hot. When those receptors are blocked, the sympathetic system becomes more activated. Blood vessels may tighten, heart rate may shift, pressure can rise. Now imagine you check your blood pressure every morning right after coffee. What are you measuring? Not your natural morning blood pressure. You are measuring your morning blood pressure plus caffeine. That becomes your pattern on paper. A pattern your doctor may look at seriously. A pattern you may worry about daily. A pattern built partly on stimulation, not reality. I once had a woman tell me her pressure was always mysteriously higher in the morning. When we went through her routine carefully, she revealed that she drank 2 strong mugs of tea first, then checked. She thought that was normal and had never imagined the tea mattered. When she changed the timing, the story changed. That is how small routines distort entire health narratives. The fix is simple. Wait at least 30 minutes after caffeine before checking. Even better, check before caffeine in the morning whenever possible. That gives you the cleanest baseline. Now, mistake number 4, checking with a full bladder. This one surprises almost everyone, but it is real. When your bladder is full, your body experiences it as internal stress, not emotional stress, physiological stress, pressure, discomfort, urgency. That activates the sympathetic nervous system, and when that system activates, blood pressure rises, which means something as ordinary as needing to urinate can distort your reading significantly. I had a patient once who proudly told me she always checked her blood pressure first thing in the morning before doing anything else because she wanted the purest number possible. But first thing for her meant before going to the bathroom. So what she was actually measuring was morning blood pressure plus bladder stress. Once she changed that one step, her readings became more believable and more consistent. This is one of the easiest corrections on the list. Bathroom first, then rest, then measure. Do not reverse that order. Mistake number 5, crossing your legs. This is not a cosmetic issue. It is mechanical. When you cross your legs, you change lower body blood flow and vascular resistance. That changes the reading. A lot of people sit that way automatically because it feels comfortable, familiar, and relaxed. Then the machine gives them a number shaped partly by posture rather than by their true baseline. That is what makes blood pressure measurement so deceptive. You can feel relaxed and still be generating bad data. The machine does not care whether you feel at ease. It cares what the blood flow is doing. So both feet flat on the floor, not crossed at the knees, not crossed at the ankles, not tucked under the chair. Flat, still, balanced, every single time. Mistake number 6, no back support. This one sounds too small to matter until you understand what the body is doing. If your back is not supported, your body has to use postural muscles to keep you upright. That means you are doing low-level muscular work even if it does not feel like effort. But the body still reads it as effort, and when the body is working, blood pressure responds. I have seen people check their pressure sitting on the edge of a bed, perched on a stool, leaning forward over a counter, or half holding themselves upright in a dining chair. They think they are at rest. Their body disagrees. A resting blood pressure reading should happen while your body is as physically passive as possible. So use a chair with a proper back. Lean into it. Let your shoulders relax. Let the chair carry your torso. The less your muscles are working, the truer your number becomes. Now, before we continue, I want to say something directly. If you have been making any of these mistakes, it does not mean you are careless. It means almost nobody explained the full protocol properly. People are sold the device, given a leaflet, told to monitor at home, and somehow expected to produce clinically useful data without ever being taught how. So if you have been doing it wrong, you are not broken. You were just never given the whole system. That changes right now. Mistake number 7. Wrong arm position. Your arm needs to be at heart level, not lower, not higher. At heart level. This matters because gravity changes pressure. If your arm hangs too low, the reading tends to come out falsely high. If your arm is held too high, the reading may come out falsely low. So the question is not just, is my arm comfortable? The question is the cuff level with the middle of my chest? That is why a table matters. Rest your arm on a flat surface, not on your lap, not hanging in the air, not floating off the side of the chair, a stable surface at the right height. This is one of those mistakes people make even when they are trying to do everything else properly. They are quiet, they are rested, their feet are flat, their back is supported, but the arm is wrong, so the data is still wrong. That is how sensitive good technique really is. Mistake number 8. Wrong cuff size. This is one of the biggest hidden problems in home blood pressure monitoring. A machine comes with a cuff. People assume the cuff fits everyone. It doesn't. If the cuff is too small for your arm, the reading often comes out falsely high. If it is too large, the reading can come out falsely low. And people can build an entire story about their cardiovascular health around those wrong numbers for months or years. I once met a man who was convinced his blood pressure was steadily worsening. He had pages of alarming readings written down. What no one had checked was the cuff size. His upper arm was too large for the standard cuff he had been using. When he changed to the proper size, the whole story changed. Not because his blood pressure suddenly improved, because the device finally fit his body. So do not guess. Measure the circumference of your upper arm halfway between the shoulder and elbow. Then compare it with the cuff's stated range. This is not a minor detail. It is one of the biggest accuracy issues on the entire list. Mistake number 9. Only measuring one arm forever without ever comparing both. Blood pressure can differ between arms. Sometimes only slightly, sometimes enough to matter clinically, and in some people, a larger difference can itself be a clue worth evaluating. But even when it is not a sign of disease, it still matters for home monitoring. Because if one arm consistently runs higher and you happen to always use the lower reading arm, you may underestimate your true blood pressure for years. That is why when you first begin monitoring at home, you should measure both arms on the same occasion. See which side consistently reads higher, then use that arm going forward. The goal is not perfection. The goal is consistency anchored in the more cautious, more informative number. Mistake number 10. Using a wrist monitor instead of an upper arm monitor. I understand the appeal. Wrist monitors feel smaller, easier, more convenient. But convenience is not the same thing as reliability. The arteries at the wrist are smaller and much more sensitive to position. If the wrist is not held exactly at the right height relative to the heart, the reading can be distorted, and most people do not position it exactly the same way every single time. That means bigger error. Upper arm monitors, when validated and used with the right cuff size, are generally much more reliable. So if you want readings you can genuinely trust, use a validated upper arm monitor. Not because wrist monitors are always useless. Because when real medical decisions may be made based on your numbers, better reliability matters. Now, mistake number 11, not understanding white coat effect and masked hypertension. This is where the story becomes more nuanced. Some people get higher readings in medical settings simply because the setting itself makes them anxious. The doctor's office, the nurse's desk, the pharmacy kiosk, the clinic waiting room. That is called white coat effect. Blood pressure rises in the medical setting, but the person's usual daily pressure is lower. That matters because if you only look at clinic numbers, a person may appear more hypertensive than they really are. Then there is the opposite problem, masked hypertension. This is when the clinic reading looks normal, but the person's blood pressure is elevated in real life, at home, at work, during normal daily routines. That can be even more dangerous because it hides. The calm clinic setting creates a falsely reassuring number, while the real cardiovascular system spends most of its life under higher pressure. That is exactly why proper home monitoring matters. Not random home monitoring, not panic checking 5 times in one afternoon, not checking every time you feel annoyed. Proper home monitoring. Because the goal is not to collect numbers, the goal is to collect truth. Now let's talk about the correct protocol. Because once you know the mistakes, you need a method that actually gives you useful data. Here is the protocol I want you to follow. In the morning, check before food, before caffeine, and ideally before medications. Go to the bathroom first. Then sit quietly for 5 full minutes. Back supported, feet flat, arm at heart level. No talking, no phone, no television stress. Then take 2 readings, about 1 minute apart. Write both down. In the evening, do the same thing at about the same time each day. Again, 2 readings, about 1 minute apart. Do this for 7 consecutive days. Now here is the part many people never hear. Throw away the first day. Not because it is useless, because first day readings often run a little higher from novelty, uncertainty, or less polished technique. Then calculate the average of the remaining 6 days. That average is your true home blood pressure picture, not the single highest number that frightened you. Not the single lowest number that comforted you. The average, that is the number that matters most. And here is the final piece. If that average is consistently above 130/80, that is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to have a real conversation with your doctor. A calm, evidence-based conversation. If that average is consistently below 130/80 with proper technique, that is genuinely reassuring. Not fake reassurance. Real reassurance based on trustworthy data. That is why measurement quality matters so much, because the difference between unnecessary panic and real peace is often technique. The difference between overtreatment and appropriate treatment is often technique. The difference between catching a genuine problem early and missing it for years is often technique. So let's pull everything together. Rest 5 minutes before you begin. Do not talk. Do not check after caffeine. Empty your bladder first. Keep both feet flat. Support your back. Keep your arm at heart level. Use the correct cuff size. Measure both arms when you begin. Use a validated upper arm monitor. And use the 7-day average protocol. That is it. That is how you turn a machine into something clinically useful. That is how you stop guessing. That is how you stop building fear or false reassurance on bad data, and that is how you finally get numbers that mean something. Let me leave you with this. A blood pressure machine does not tell the truth automatically. It tells the truth only when you create the right conditions for truth. That is your job. Not because you need perfection, because your heart, your arteries, your kidneys, and every decision based on those numbers deserve real information. So the next time you wrap that cuff around your arm, do not just ask, what number am I going to get? Ask the better question. Have I created the conditions for the number to mean anything? That question changes everything.